Hi, this is Heather Staker from Ready to Blend. Today we're talking about taking ownership for quality, particularly the quality of your online content, whether that's online courses, online modules, online lessons, software, whatever programs or apps you're using that are digital that are helping you bring about your blended or fully virtual experience in your classrooms. I'm joined today by John Jacobs. He is the director of the Wisconsin eSchool Network, and he's also helps run the Wisconsin Digital Learning Collaborative. So he has a really great vantage point. He's seen a lot of districts and schools around the state of Wisconsin and beyond, and has some strong opinions about the importance of managing quality. As you listen to John, I want you to watch for a few things. How does he define, he asks you to really think about how you're defining quality for your digital content. How are you doing that? What does quality even mean to you? And then how are you sustaining your commitment to quality even when there's regime change? So listen to him as he talks about that importance of really preserving quality even when the teachers change, when the school leaders change. Also think about his view on professional learning as well as planning your operations. All of those things are key ingredients he's going to talk about now as he talks about choosing to own it when it comes to quality for your digital instructional resources. Take it away, John.
As the executive director of the Wisconsin eSchool Network, I sit in a seat that allows me to observe the K-12 digital learning space right now. Across all of our partners, we serve more than 200 districts, and we see a wide spectrum from virtual charter schools that are both full-time and part-time to now supplemental district programs. And our newest models that seem to be evolving are the blended learning programs. All in all, we serve about 40,000 plus enrollments with over 600 online and blended instructors in a given year. And all of these are engaged in digital content in some way, shape, or form. This broad spectrum of vendor to locally developed digital content strategies exposes us to some really interesting happenings in the field, both quality and in some cases, subpar implementations. As we work with our partners, there's no doubt that our partners and districts and leaders and teachers most definitely have a choice in this process. The critical question we continue to ask our partners is not if and what you're doing, but it's how. How are you owning and getting behind the decision that you're making and implementing? So three things. The first one is, how are you defining quality? It's interesting when you look at the national landscape. Sure, we have some national examples from Quality Matters and iNACOL and a few others that help us put together a definition of quality, but what we've seen is districts still tend to define quality differently. Example, we used the iNACOL rubric a few years back to procure an online personal finance course from multiple vendors. We wanted to land on one solution using the same rubric from iNACOL. Engaging with several districts and their instructional staff, at the end of the day, we could not get past three opposing opinions, all of which were completely different in different vendors. And so at the end of the day, in that scenario, we ended up acquiring two to meet the needs of our partners. But this tells us that curriculum adoption is still extremely important and not a silver bullet across the board. There's not a single solution, a single vendor, single process or framework or set of standards that a district can adopt that's going to create a level of consistency that makes this easy. District ownership is extremely important in this process. Second, does a district have a strategy that is both strong in commitment from the needed stakeholders as well as an appropriate framework and infrastructure to sustain success over time and through change? Leaders change, boards change, strategies change, schools change, students change. Do you have the appropriate commitment from the board or community all the way down to the instructor and student and support staff that's needed to maintain a strong strategy? We see four components of this specific bucket of commitment and strategy. The first one is, do you have a curriculum adoption process that continues to align to your local policies and procedures? We don't like bureaucracy to get in the way because digital content can change and move much more quickly than the traditional curriculum adoption infrastructures that we have in place. At the same time, there needs to be some level of backbone and quality assurance as a district engages with digital content. Number two, instructors must be given the agency to own their digital classroom, just as they have with traditional brick and mortar classrooms. Third, appropriate training and ongoing professional learning have to be put in place. It's not a one and done. It's not we'll get to it when we get to it. There has to be purposeful training and expectations for the teachers to engage in the training and professional learning to ensure the innovation can both sustain and grow over time. And then lastly, an operational strategy, as we mentioned before, has to be put in place, not just put in place, but it has to be put in place with appropriate resources. As we continue to engage with partners, the last thing we continue to see is an understanding of the needed resources. The spectrum that we see is extremely different. We see some people who are allocating little resource, and we see some people and partners who are allocating significant resources. But we do start to see a gap that technology is cheap and free. Digital content, I would argue, is not cheap and free. Don't get me wrong, you can use OER and use some free resources, but I don't believe you can do that exclusively. I believe that a strong digital content strategy includes both full online content from vendors on one side of the spectrum, and on the other side of the spectrum, I see districts authoring content, and then you have everything in between. But as we've engaged with the field, we've found that there's 5 opportunities to really take seriously as districts and schools and partners and teachers engage with digital content. And a local program has to take these and make these their own. So let's jump into them. The first one is take control of the digital content. As a program, as a teacher, as a district, you need to own it. Sure, the vendor created a course, but you can't use that as an excuse if there's a gap in the content. We've yet to see in implementing more than 450 fully developed online courses that translates into 8,000 sections of digital content per year. We've yet to see a vendor knock it out of the park perfectly. Every vendor has strengths, every vendor has weaknesses. Therefore, as a district engages in this process, it's really important to take and own that digital content, just like you would a textbook. Very rarely does a teacher use a textbook from cover to cover, start to finish, without any supplemental resources, without any tweaking of the way things are deployed on a scope and sequence, along with additional activities and assessments. At the end of the day, there isn't a single perfect solution. Instructors are instrumental in owning the experience on behalf of students. Don't get me wrong, there's student agency, which is a whole other topic. But as we've engaged with partners, we're increasingly expecting digital and technology to solve our problems without a willingness to engage and own it. So in this opportunity number 1, we believe and we've seen that districts who take a proactive approach in controlling, in managing and editing and tweaking the digital content to fit their district needs find much more success than a district who takes it off the shelf and uses it as is. Opportunity number 2, allocate time with the content. Just as you would in a traditional brick and mortar classroom, you're not going to expect the teacher to show up on day 1 and just instantly start teaching that content. There's lesson planning and engagement and learning of that content that the teacher has to experience firsthand. It's the same thing with digital content. And in a society where we have instant gratification and time is very limited, we lean on technology to be efficient for us. However, if you're going to implement digital content well, you have to allocate time both from a decision-making process and implementation and ongoing maintenance. And that's at all levels, from the administrative to the instructor, and also with the students and parents. Allocate appropriate amounts of time. Know that there's going to be modifications that need to be made. Compensate teachers accordingly. Provide the appropriate amounts of time to manage those digital classrooms just as you would in a traditional environment. For every course or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 a teacher teaches, how many preps do they get in a traditional brick and mortar environment? That same concept of allowing teachers to have time, allowing administrators to have time to engage in this space is critical. A failure to allocate time is simply going to minimize the quality that you have given to your students. Third, implement quality assurances with the content. Commonly we hear digital content is questioned because of the integrity of assignment is compromised. This is no different than in any classroom. Somebody passes around a worksheet. Somebody talks in the hallway about an answer. The key is how are you proactively strategizing around academic integrity? What strategies, what supports, what teacher agency, what student agency are we equipping them with to build not only relationships so a teacher understands who that learner is, but also tools and strategies that they can use to sidestep some of the academic integrity issues that are presented with digital learning, whether it's fully online or in a classroom. Tools, training, relationship, multiple forms of assessment, proctored exams, and even giving teachers the ability to modify content, yes, including vendor content, are all critical strategies that have to be allowed in the digital environment. But these are also both contingent on the previous two opportunities of time and control that have to play well together. Fourth, ensure that the instructors, the programs, the schools, the support staff, and even the students have the appropriate skill and development opportunities to successfully engage in a digital content environment. More and more districts are asking instructors to develop or author digital content, which isn't necessarily a problem in of itself, but what we often see being missed is the right skill set. Not every teacher has the skill to do this well. Sure, teachers are subject matter experts, but are they curriculum designers? Do they have curriculum development skills? Do they have coding and development and HTML skills? In most cases, teachers don't have those skills. So why would we expect for them to build a course in a fully online or digital environment? Administration and instructors must have a solid understanding of what skills they need to get the job done well. Not every instructor is equipped to be a quality online or blended instructor, let alone a digital content developer. So be wise in how you're allocating appropriate skills and time to develop the skills needed. And then lastly, allocate appropriate resources towards digital content. This comes in the form of human resources, financial resources, and time. As you look at digital content, the industry average is pretty broad, but if you tried to nail it down, the average cost to build a full one-credit course sure can be debated, but we see an average cost of around $100,000 or more that's deployed over a 1 to 2 year window of that course development. On the flip side of the spectrum, we see districts who are asking teachers to develop an entire digital course for some level of stipend, maybe $2,000, maybe $5,000. Rarely is it more than that. And a lot of times it's an hourly rate or it's a duties as assigned. The other interesting part with that is that we see digital content strategies on very condensed windows of time at the district level. Generally, we see districts developing full-level courses throughout the summer months. So when you really get down to it, they're using 6 to 8 weeks to develop an entire course compared to vendors taking 1 to 2 years. In the worst case scenario, we've seen a district take 2 weeks during the teacher prep time in August to develop an entire course. The old statement of you get what you pay for doesn't always ring true, but as we leverage the innovative teachers, the early adopters, sure, they'll pave the path for us, but this is not sustainable, nor is it the norm as districts look at what strategy they're going to deploy from vendor content all the way down to locally developed content. If you're not applying the resources in the form of time, financial, and human appropriately, don't expect high results. To leave you with some realistic expectations, on average, as we engage with our partners, we generally see that it takes them a good 2 to 3 years to really have their head wrapped around online and blended learning strategies specific to digital content. Rarely do we see people right out of the gates without any historical background knocked out of the park in the first year. So give yourself time. Know that success can be done with a high level of quality. Just make sure that you're addressing these 5 opportunities.
Thank you, John Jacobs. I love those 5 opportunities for improving the quality of our online software and digital content, online courses, all of the different digital aspects that we're trying to provide for our students. Bottom line, take ownership. It's up to us. Thanks again.